Hey all, and welcome to Traveling Molly's virtual um, edition. And our features tonight are Beth and Fennelly and Derrick. And I forgot to ask you, is it Harriel or Harrell?
Harrell.
Harrell. Okay, good. I should have taken care of that before we went public, but tonight, this is all going to be public and we'll just have what we have. Um, Tonight we don't have Al DeGenova, my co-host, with us. He'll be here next month for sure. Um, and I'm just psyched. We've got some great people in the open mic. Usually, what we find is that everybody's great in the open mic, and um, we'll get going. Now, I'm actually gonna turn on the light so I can see. We start um, with the hosts reading a poem, and so here we go. This one is called Without Warning, and if you need to get a visual, think about a map of Manhattan and it'll come together for you. After that searing knee to the groin of the city, Manhattan lays flaccid against the tender balls of Brooklyn. But 2 years later, the stop on the subway map remains, unaltered by a namesake reduced to rubble and ash. And now I find the street connecting here to where I want to go is arrowed in the wrong way only. There is no certainty in maps, neither in the latitude of asteroids nor the longitude of wind, not in the arrival of miracles nor the departure of love. The terminal gates are always changing. In Lowell, a textile mill stands empty, the town a thin and haggard shadow of itself. Down the road, my early stomping grounds have been paved over, the hippie head shop, now an outlet for cellular phones. No refuge in the friendly delicatessen where I brewed countless pots of steaming Java, recently replaced by a 3-story bookstore with baristas fixing lattes inside. New highways cut through cornfields and forests, subdivisions sprout as if from acorns in formerly unincorporated townships. Roads end without warning, change names for no apparent reason. Boundaries are renegotiated. Everywhere, Latter-day Magellans trade in their compasses for user-friendly satellite technology. But where is the floor plan that tells me where to put my feet, the sign that whispers, "Do not enter," before I go too far? There is no certainty in maps, no telling what they will not tell, no way to know except by going. Thank you. All right. So I get to choose. And how about if we start with Robert Chicoine, Bob Chicoine. Good to hear you, always.
It'll be someone else today. About 50 years ago, there was a writer who became the bee's knees in literary circles. He was called the heir to the throne of Hemingway, if throne it is. And in the interim, he's fallen into obscurity, if not some disrepute. But he still does it for me. So I've got a few short pieces by him. You may be familiar with them, and if not, you may guess who it is by the style. What the doctor said. He said it didn't look good. He said it looks bad, in fact, real bad. He said I counted 32 of them on one lung before I quit counting them. I said, I'm glad. I wouldn't want to know about any more being there than that. He said, are you a religious man? Do you kneel down in forest groves and let yourself ask for help? When you come to a waterfall, mist blowing against your face and arms, do you ask for understanding at those moments? I said, not yet, but I intend to start today. He said, I'm real sorry. He said, I wish I had some other news to give you. I said, Amen. And then he said something else I didn't catch. And not knowing what else to do and not wanting him to have to repeat it and me to have to fully digest it, I just looked at him for a minute and he looked back. It was then I jumped up and shook hands with this man who had just given me something no one else on earth had ever given me. I may have even thanked him, habit being so strong. Grief. Woke up early this morning and from my bed looked far across the strait to see a small boat moving in the choppy water, a single running light on. Remembered my friend who used to shout his dead wife's name from the hilltops around Perugia, who set a place for her at his simple table long after she had gone, who opened the window for her so she could have fresh air. Such display I found embarrassing. So did his other friends. I couldn't see it. Not until this morning. Bonnard's nudes. His wife. 40 years he painted her, again and again. The nude in the last painting, the same young nude as the first. His wife. As he remembered her young, as she was young. His wife in her bath, at her dressing table, in front of the mirror, undressed. His wife with her hands under her breasts looking out onto the garden. The sun bestowing warmth and color, every living thing in bloom there. She, young and tremulous and most desirable. When she died, he painted a while longer, a few landscapes, then died and was put down next to her, his young wife. Late fragment. And did you get what you wanted from this life, even so? I did. And what did you want? To be loved? No. To feel myself beloved in the world. Ray Carter.
Wow, what a breathtaking way to get started. Thanks for being with us tonight. And next up, how about let's see, Sandra Beasley. So nice to see you after such a while.
Yes, I'm thrilled to be here, and just absolutely delighted to be in the company of some Oxford friends and to hear tonight's featured readers and this wonderful open mic. Um, I am going to just read a couple of poems. I've been working on a memoir that is dealing with a 2022 incident. My husband experienced triple organ failure, heart, liver, kidneys. And it's just a memoir about the kind of absurdities of being plunged very quickly into the medical system and a marriage in crisis. Although luckily I'm writing it from a place of less crisis now. But as a process of writing that, I got some poems. So I'm going to read a couple of those poems. The cheetah. The cheetah was what I called the surgeon when he came prowling at what always seemed odd hours, checking on the ECMO machine that circulated your blood in thick loops outside your flesh, checking on the impella he'd placed to pump inside your heart. He was so hungry to schedule a test, another test, so antsy for the tube's removal that you finally said, "Hey, slow down, buddy. What's your hurry?" Which made him laugh and bought us another 15 hours until the next procedure. That felt like a blessing because we did not see the clock every doctor around us could hear ticking. Because for you to live long enough to leave the ICU, his job was to steal back every gift he'd plugged into your body. And then this is a ekphrastic poem. It's called Blue Rooster. If anybody's been to DC, I am a DC poet. I love my city. My city has had a tough year and a tough year before that. So send some love to DC with our lack of voting and our various occupations. But if you've ever been to the National Gallery of Art, you might have noticed a spectacular blue rooster sculpture on the roof. So it's an ekphrastic poem. The epigraph says, "After Hancock," which is the name of the sculpture. It's a 2013 sculpture by Katharina Fritsch. Blue Rooster, after Hancock, 2013, Katharina Fritsch. In response to no particular rhetorical question, Katharina Fritsch mounted an oversized cock on the roof of the National Gallery of Art. Electric blue, modeled after a three-dimensional print of a taxidermied rooster. A temporary roost in 2016 made a permanent home in 2020 when pandemic times block pedestrians from anything but an outside view of a museum. Fast forward to July 2020. When I first mapped the route from our southwest home to the northeast hospital using every possible Eckington side road, saving 1 minute at a time. That's the to route to the hospital. The back route is doomed to be a hodgepodge of wandering rights, U Street nonsense, missed turns, and egregious tunnel. Because what am I hurrying home to? Our angry, scared cat, and waiting to drive back again to your room. That's when I discover the blue rooster. Lighthouse from northeast to southwest. Night that I leave you with skin still yellow from bilirubin. I go to the blue rooster. Day that I send a humiliating breakdown of our finances to your dad. Blue rooster. Day that I feel good about cooking chicken for you. Blue rooster. Night that we discover the sleeping mask might work. Blue rooster. Night that we both think your ICU nurse was drinking champagne. Blue rooster. Day that I have 2 drinks at the nearby bar between sessions. Blue rooster. Night that I order all wrong size clothing based on your edema. Blue rooster. Night I suspect a neighboring ward patient has monkeypox. Blue rooster. Day I hover for an hour because I think your urine bag will overflow. Blue rooster. Day you admit little Stevie's memoir isn't that great on Kindle. Blue rooster. Day that I phone interview for the new job from the ICU waiting area. Blue rooster. Night I nearly fell asleep at a stoplight on North Capitol. Blue Rooster Day, I built 3 newly needed types of chair for our apartment with a hex wrench. Blue Rooster. The Blue Rooster never had a particular take on the situation beyond the basic resistance to bullshit and a preference for brightness. But when I drove you home from the hospital with Tom Petty on the radio and your parents in the back seat, I wanted that signature of Hancock on your discharge paperwork. So now you know why we took the route that we did. Thank you very much.
There's some serious wordplay in there. Yes, well, thank you for being here. And let us see. How about John Simmons? John, we haven't seen you in a bit.
Yes, thank you very much, Nina, and hi to Beth Ann. I was one of your pupils 25 years ago at a writers' conference in at Indiana University, and have bumped into you and Tom several times at AWP. So it's good to see you. This is a poem. This is from my new book called Catching My Drift, and this poem is timed to the approach of St. Valentine's Day, which also is a day of some historic local interest in Chicago. It's the 96th anniversary of an event in a garage on North Clark Street, which some of you may recall. So this is called, and which kind of signifies this sort of sweetness and horror of a well-known holiday. This is called Confections of Affection for St. Valentine's Day. My heart and sugar romance tastes sweet, but is not helping on the scales or lab test charts. Almost any expert is quick to beat my conscience with each bite I take, reminding how the carbs build more of us near places that need extra blood, pumped to and from a real heart. Links engaging heart and candy, celebrations of the same time next year's trysts of fatal gifting, share wondrous and conflicting roots with saints beheaded for performing weddings unapproved by Emperor Claudio of his soldiers. Lots of Valentine victims lived and died, scholars tell us, their martyred pains like flying arrows of Apocrypha. More credit goes to Chaucer for his 1380s poem of the day. Quote, St. Valentine's, when every bird comes there to choose his mate, unquote. Maybe to Richard II and bride, Anne of Bohemia, titled Parliament of Fowls. Precursor to Hallmark, the Bard of Canterbury fame launched the rite of heartbound notes. Fast forwarding 500 years to Cadbury, UK's candy dynasty of chocolate bites in cardboard hearts, a shelf-life reminder of past nibblings, holidays of Whitman, Fanny Farmer, Seas and Russell Stover kept our snacks caloric. Along came Necco with non-chocolate hearts and short messages, big between world wars, until rationed sugar interrupted. In peace, Necco hearts burst in return, bankruptcy stopping its pulse until Spangler's transplant brought it back. Now another sultan of sweets, Krispy Kreme, has added messaged heart-shaped donuts to the coronary sugar rush. Today's heart gets the cardio candy of pills, pacers, and prayers, hoping chambers and valves work as expected. Other hearts other heart parts fully connected to a bloody, sweet treat called oxygen. Thank you. Happy Valentine's Day.
Thank you. So we went from the rooster to the ship of fowls. We're going for it. How about Patrick Reardon? Hey there.
Hi there, everybody. My wife was a social worker and she had a client in the senior building that took the place of the garage where the St. Valentine's Day massacre took place. So there's a connection here in some vague way. I went to the hardware store recently and it's anyway, so I have a poem about going to the hardware store or someone like me going to the hardware store because of my lack of understanding of anything in the hardware store. So it's called Hardware Gods. I pray to the hardware gods every couple months or so at their Clark Devon Church, a former movie palace, when I need to translate the spirituality of electricity or plumbing pipes or rock salt into English. I write, I don't hammer, I don't tinker with outlets, I don't plumb. My son complains I never baptized him in the hardware faiths of DIY, but I was born a heathen. All I know now is to go like Luke's publican to the hardware gods and confess my worthlessness, my sinful ignorance. Translate for me the 25W MAX on the floor lamp instructions and the base type E26 into a physical object that I can screw into the socket. Yes, I can screw a bulb into a socket alone. Unveil for me the mystery of the mesh sock needed, like a condom, on the washer hose to stop lint from plugging the drain, birthing a clog. Bestow on me the long pole with adjustable clamps to reach up into the ceiling fixture to remove the bulb that has passed away and install a new one in a kind of virgin birth, given that I am blissfully ignorant of such knowledge and acting simply as a messenger for the hardware gods who, at end of day, go home and eat their supper and sleep their sleep and never anymore, classrooms long past, have to consult the word gods. Yes, the hardware gods can write a text like turning a screw or hammering a nail. When I hammer, the nail bends. And one other poem, I've been writing a series of poems that are inspired by Black spirituals. And this is one that was inspired, at least in part, by Wade in the Water. It's called Trouble. All souls trouble the water, trouble the missing. Prowl the pews, all souls. Walk dusty Thessalonians' road to Jubilee land. Raise up, all souls, raise up. Trouble the water, trouble the bird-song morning leaves. Trouble the winged pensives, all souls. Dress white, dress red, dress black as the cosmos. Raise, all souls, a titanic howl. Raise the brothers' scream, a harmony of rage, pain, infant pain, too unseen as taught, unheard in their rip-skin silence. Trouble the water, all souls, with wading. Bless the clatter of bird wings over Ilium Arena. Bless the hidden, bless the failing, christen the howl. Baptize the spirit dream, all souls. Water the forehead, the arms, feet, and eyes. Water the trouble, water the howl. Thank you.
Thank you. let's have a little prose. Bill Harrison, who does our tech, is also a writer um, from across the hall. Bill Harrison, what do you got?
This is a piece of prose, some fiction that I'm working on. The story is tentatively titled That Day, and the speaker is a 16-year-old boy who suffered the loss of his father 8 years earlier. My father, Ben, was a soldier during the Vietnam War. He came home a couple of months before I was born with a bad injury to his spine. At first, the doctors hoped he'd be able to regain the use of his legs. He never talked to me about any of this stuff, but Mom told me that Dad did some intense rehab for about 6 months. All the effort he put in didn't help. He wound up having to live in a wheelchair. And that's the only way I ever knew my father, as someone who could move with great difficulty from his chair to the couch or his bed. Otherwise, he was stuck in that damn chair, which he hated. When I was old enough to understand these kinds of things, I knew he resented the hell out of his injury, the chair, the lousy care he felt he'd received at the VA, all of it. Despite all that, I had a lot of fun with my father, especially after I began talking up a storm when I was 2. He'd picked up some sleight of hand tricks from an army buddy, and he loved playing made-up magic games with me. One game I remember was, "Where's the coin?" He'd pull a nickel out of my ear or his nose and then make it disappear into thin air. Mom told me I couldn't stop laughing when Dad would do these tricks. I became a lifelong Yankees fan because of my father. From as early as I can remember, we had either the radio or TV going whenever there was a game on. A little later, Dad and I started collecting and trading baseball cards. We'd buy packs of cards at the drugstore down the street, then sit at the kitchen table sorting through our treasure. Man, I wish I still had those cards. But the best thing Dad and I did when I was a kid was build an HO-sized train town. We put down tracks that crossed bridges, went through tunnels, bypassed a farm and stable, and ended up at a depot. Dad got me 3 different engines so we could run several trains at the same time. We laid everything out on a huge piece of plywood, which I painted and repainted as our layout grew and changed. My favorite memory from that time is of us playing with Traintown on Sundays with the baseball game on the radio. That was super cool. Things changed when Dad was diagnosed with diabetes. I think I was around 7. He had to prick himself with a needle several times a day, which freaked me out. Sometimes he had to give himself a shot in his leg, which really upset me. When Dad saw how I reacted to these things, he started wheeling into the bathroom to do them. I felt so bad for him. By the time I turned 8, Dad had become a different person. He lost his sense of humor after he became diabetic. He no longer wanted to do fun things with me. He lost interest in baseball, something I thought could never happen. I felt like he lost interest in me, too. Then came that day, Thursday, October 20th, 1983, the day that fucked up my life ever since. Thank you.
I know what comes next. Y'all will have to wait until it's published. Anyway, let's see. Robbie Nestor. Robbie Nestor.
Hi. I've got 2 poems that are going to be published sometime in Vox Populi. I'll start with one that was inspired by a poem by Ross Gay. It's called Busker in the Subway Station. I've spent a lot of time on subways, so I understand their etiquette, rules on behavior and crowded places, where people might be high or full of rage, unbalanced in 100 different ways. I've seen buskers on city street corners, but never in subway stations, sometimes empty and abandoned. In such spaces, it's not safe to look a stranger in the eye. Recently, I watched a video on YouTube in which a cellist plays in a white tiled subway station outside a pizza stand where, I'm certain, the scent of pepperoni mingles with old urine. Crowds passed strains of Vivaldi's Four Seasons. At first, people just keep walking. They have trains to catch, but the notes just keep rising. And soon a small crowd gathers, admiring the burnished box, savoring its resonance, the strength of the musician's bowing arm, muscles taut as an Olympian's. Coins begin to rain into his cigar box, a few folded bills. Small children seek the deep source of the sound. An old man with waist-length dreadlocks puts down his heavy pack and sighs. People forget the meetings they might miss, till one by one they start to look around at all the others, realizing they are not alone, and someone smiles. Time for the second? Yep, okay. Shorter. Liminal. One late summer day, when I was just about 13, I saw a bedraggled mimosa tree growing beside a dumpster. It was an accident, seed dropped by a bird, but it seemed a firmament of pinwheel stars. All I wanted was to climb it, rest beneath the shelter of its leaves, to escape the awkward body I was tethered to, growing hair in places that had once been sheer skin, volcanic acne seething on my cheeks and chin. I crossed over to the vacant lot where the smell of ripe rot stung my nose, felt the tree's hot bark beneath my hands, waves of heat shimmering on the cement. Above me, in the heaving gypsy caterpillar tents, thousands of bodies transformed to something new, consuming every leaf, falling through the web onto the dirt. I was caught up in this wreck of tangled morning glory vines and ragweed, this latter day gone Eden. Thank you.
Thank you. That memory of mimosas from when I was young, a little feathery pink, smelling better than anything you could imagine. Uh, uh, Pablo Arevalo, how are you?
I'm good. Um, Thank you for having me. Let me start with um, Detention 2018. Detention 2018. On Christmas Eve, Felipe Alonso Gomez had a fever and died on his way back to the hospital. He traveled 2,000 miles on the promise of a better life, only to spend his final days in one cell or another. 8 years old on Christmas Eve, Felipe Alonso Gomez, with a fever of 103, was released back into custody. And the Lord said, I was sick and in prison, and you did not look after me. Matthew 5:45 and 90. Second poem I'd like to read to you is Before We Were the Lands. My brother says you can't eat poetry as his worn boot presses the shovel's edge into the dry earth. He digs out the stump of an American oak whose roots are broad but shallow. Look at the birds in the trees, how they sing without worry. My brother sighs. He knows they are songs of hunger. The last stay last, and the dead stay dead. The buzz saw snarled and rattled in the yard under a silent God. Tomorrow in chains, sold for a mark on your hand of a cross, and still show up to work. The shovel's edge, the dry earth. We drown in different seas, restless. His worries pour out like water. And the final poem I have for you is I didn't want to watch. I didn't want to watch. I didn't want to see an execution in front of me, but I knew the history of how things shook. A new massacre was coming, and we were on the hook. Strange fruit on a tree, strange fruit on the street. They killed our best. They killed. We won't forget how we fought back, how we stood. Thank you.
Wow, once again. I love having your voice here. Gary, is it Gary Rosen or Rosen?
Rosin, actually. Everybody always assumes it's Rosen, but those are Ians rather than Ians.
Right. Well, and there are those of us who know from violins, and so when we see Rosen,
That's right, we're
they
pool players.
Rosen.
Okay, well, this is a poem that's an ekphrastic after a photograph that my link to is no longer good. But it's after a photograph by Israeli-American photographer Neil Fulberg. And he has this wonderful book of photographs where he went into the wilderness in Israel and took pictures of ruins and stuff against the night sky. And there's this wonderful photograph called Scorpius Milky Way Rising. And this poem is called Desert Starlight. Out in the wilderness, after the dust settles, you can walk by starlight, bright enough to show the way, dim enough to let you sit until you feel the earth as it turns. Shadows as they shift soak into the sand until a shoulder of shadows becomes a hill and trees, the arc of a path, the tumble of a tower, the outline of walls crumbling as they reach, until texture and tone erode the familiar, blur the edge between earth and the heavens. That cloud, does it pass in front or behind? Does it catch the light or make it? That dark across the stars, did the wind pick up? Or does that dust travel the beyond, carried by the crest of some great explosion, ancient when your ancestors first looked up, first stacked stones? Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you for joining us. We've really had a slew of ekphrastic poems over the last several months. And for those who don't know, if you wanted to bring in the pictures, we can share them on the screen or whatever. But I kind of like being able to see the poet's face reading, which kind of goes away when you share your art. But anyway, let's finish the open mic with Brenda Cardenas. Brendita. Welcome back from Mexico. You're muted, Brenda.
Okay, sorry about that. I'm here now, right? And thank you. I really wish I could have stayed eternally. Okay. This poem, I have two poems. This one, I don't know where it came from. Buck Hunger. Between the shack's low boards where a nail loosened and one plank dove to the dirt, a stray cat slips, nestles in the rotted hem of a woman's calico dress, eyes fixed on mice huddling beneath a moose's skull that hangs on the wall like a hat. Only hunger that has walked highway and country road, forest path and nightmare enters here hoping for a windfall of canned beans, but finds a taxidermist's glass eye, tin cup sucked dry, owl beak and two spent bullets in an ashtray. Nix the meal and lie on the cot with its circus of creaks. You'll want to dream before the frost settles on your eyelashes. You'll want to meet again that 8-point buck who stared you down when you had no rifle, no bow. Find the fire in his eyes, the snort billowing from his flared nostrils. This is the blackest sound you'll ever hear. Will you bolt? Make him your lunch, your archive, your muse. This day, skip the notch in your belt, blow him a kiss of winter breath. And the other one I have for you is very brand new. This is called Ode to Ice. In Do the Right Thing, Mookie slides ice down Tina's neck, breasts on the hottest day of the year. The cube releases her mind from the body's prison, her tongue from its humid cave. Then the melt of his kiss coaxes her back into corporeal chemistry, its cascade and rapture. Ice swishing and swooshing beneath skates composes its own sharp symphony to grace the skater's ballet, percussive sluice for ear and foot, slice, scratch, swoosh, the raspiest winter whisper. Have you really listened to the snap, to the earth cracking itself in two when you drop a cube fresh from the freezer into a glass of fizz? You might hear everything that will save you in that tiny explosion. So how can we ever absolve the theft of our awe when crystals paint fractals on our window panes? The pilfering of a word that now grates our tongue's skin as if it were an orange rind beneath metal teeth. This callous ice that opens the lake no matter how gingerly we step, that swallows us, then seals itself over our heads. This fanged ice snarling and barking like the fire hydrants and dogs of another era. This fiend ice that splinters communities into shards, dystopian fracture forever unforgivable. Thank you.
This whole open mic has just given me so much to feel and reflect on. And, as we've experienced some of the word resonance, I'm thinking about what you're saying about ice and Sandra talking about being iced in DC. And I thought, yeah, we're kind of all iced in here. We're all iced in. So wonderful open mic. We're going to go on to our features in a moment, but I need to think about what I need to convey. The main thing is that we like to pay our features. And so we're going to ask you to make donations in the absence of a hat that we can pass. there is a donate button on Al DeGenova's after hours site, and
Tina, I will find that link and post it in the chat.
okay, in both YouTube and here, so everyone will get a chance to see it. And then while you're looking, we will hopefully get some Derrick and Beth Ann to provide links so people can either go to your page or to your publishers so they can buy your books. And you each have quite a few for people to buy. I'd like to say that buying a poet's book is the best gift you could give them, and it's a gift you give yourself as well. But yes, we like to pay our poets and we like to read our poets. So that is that. Next month, I don't have the names in front of me, so I'm not going to try. What else am I forgetting, Bill?
I think that's it.
All right. So let us see. Well, let's see. My info, Bill, maybe you could post to the other link. I don't think we can. Anyway. Yes, Beth Ann, he will do that. So I want to say how this double feature came about. Some of you have heard me say how much I appreciate Facebook in spite of itself and in spite of its owner. But one day, Beth Ann had posted about a departing colleague, and she just raved about him. And she was so disappointed, but knew that UW Milwaukee was going to be getting a marvelous, marvelous poet. And I've been thinking about having Beth Ann read Vermali's for a long, long time. And so I said, well, what do you think? How about if we were to put together a double feature with you and Derrick? And you both agreed, and it'll be very nice to see how two people who are fond of each other and admire each other's work are going to come together. After the features, we will have a three-way conversation, which is bound to be fun. So I'm going to start with Derrick Harriel, who I think I may have just butchered your name again. I apologize. He's the interim director of the Black Student Cultural Center and professor of English at the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee. His previous collections of poems include Stripper in Wonderland, Come Kingdom, Cotton and Ropes, winner of the 2014 Mississippi Institute of Arts and Letters Poetry Book Award. His short story, There's a Riot Going On, was the recipient of the Robert L. Fish Memorial Award, and he holds an MFA from Chicago State and a PhD from the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee. And I didn't realize that about Chicago State. I'm thinking about Kelly Norman Ellis and some of the other people we're fond of from there. In any case, Derrick, I'm looking forward to hearing you.
Pleasure to be here. How we doing? How we doing? Thanks for the invitation and the lovely words of how this event came to be. Beth is a poet that I admired before becoming a colleague and eventual friend and someone who I love dearly. Uh, and thinking about this reading, I was going to read some new stuff I've been working on that I'm not completely comfortable with yet. Uh, but I started thinking about Mississippi, and I've been gone from Mississippi for about a year and a half, and not I won't say not a day, but not a week goes by that I don't think about Mississippi and what Mississippi meant to me and miss Mississippi. Oxford, Mississippi in particular, is a special, special, special place, and I'm looking forward to returning, hopefully this summer, in the near future. But in thinking about Mississippi, I opened up a book called Stripper Wonderland, which was my third book of poems. And those poems really took me back to the Mississippi experience. I moved to Mississippi in 2012. And right around that time is when I started writing the poems that would eventually become Stripper Wonderland. So a lot of the poems are about the strangeness of Mississippi for me when I first moved there, about the sort of foreign nature of the Deep South and my experience with the Deep South. And so I'm going to read about 4 or 5 poems from Stripper in Wonderland. Now, here's the caveat. I couldn't find the physical copy. I don't know if that happens to y'all ever when you can't find your own book. It sucks. And then I don't want to go out and buy my book. So I got to figure this out. So I have the PDF on my computer. So I'm probably going to be staring right directly into the camera, not wanting to freak anyone out, but reading the poem from my computer screen. So if it looks a little awkward, blame me not being able to find the hard copy of Stripper in Wonderland. All right, let's get to it. This first poem is it's called Astronauts in Mississippi. Wrote this because of the many reasons why. One of the many reasons why I wrote this was because that first those first couple months in Mississippi, I remember joking with someone saying that I feel like I need a passport to be here. That's how a guy from Milwaukee, Wisconsin, who the only other place I lived was Chicago. That's how foreign it seemed when I first got there, and having again been there for 12 years, it wasn't. It felt very much like home and comfortable by the time I left. But when I first got there, it felt like another country. So this is called Astronauts in Mississippi. Why don't we rehearse country accents for a few weeks? Snatch a sir or ma'am or y'all from the dregs of a past life. The dregs of a past life contaminate this ether surrounding us and me. Hell, I'm just captivated and captive to this red earth. All this scorched earth on this earth, constellations of cotton, fields in its atmosphere. I'm rolling, too green to shoot it whole, too black to be green. There's a Martian beside the road, rotating a hog ceremonially. Heat rises from red, and all I need is a place to land this damn ship. And Martian money. Yes, Martian money for a piece of what we've come in peace for. An anthropological undertaking. A hot plate with a cold narrative. A tasting zoo of graveyard and Yardbird. Next one is called Space Cadet. Space Cadet. These poems also made me think about the movie Sinners, which was a phenomenal flick, and I watched it again about a week ago. And this is about visiting the Delta, and the Delta is where the movie took place. I believe it was shot in the Delta too. Space Cadet. All these Delta mugs read you meager. Home castles of black bodies from here. A Bermuda of bullets, debilitated, deaf uncle, bleeding, a lie out his crown. There's a woman you forgot to marry there. A velvet beach. You barefooting Mississippi anatomy in an East Side bistro. You suspect. The world know you Mississippi bound. You belong. Americano to chops. Stain like. Mississippi, land of speculation. Like the anthropologists claimed a bunch of shit about a bunch of shit. Like the homeless, beard wrapped in a bitter sidewalk. Or the warning wedged to this pump, hollering, lighting that cig right here, right now, can kill you. Like the affair and beggar back north. Or the tornado, hollering to take your happy head off. Okay. Our kid was born in Baptist Memorial Hospital in Oxford, Mississippi. And I always imagined that the birth and delivery would be this very, very, very dramatic, eventful experience, because that's how I experienced it when my sister was born and I was 5 when she was born. And my dad woke my mom up. He was like, get up. No, she woke him up. I'm sorry. And so he wakes me up like, get up. It's time, you know. And we go to the hospital, and the hospital in Milwaukee, it was a lot going on. There's always a lot going on in the hospitals here in Milwaukee. And April, my wife, wakes me up. She says, hey, it's happening. I said, okay, I'm gonna do this like my dad did it. Let's go. And we get to the hospital, Baptist Memorial Hospital, and nobody's there. So, except one person at the front desk and maybe another person in the waiting area, but it was quiet. So this is about that experience. Baptist Memorial. Surely people die here, born here, bleed here. These floors surely catch desperate. Dear Father, Hail Mary, stay with me. Cameras sniff spirits, obliviously scouring each floor for familiar tones. Earth tones, familiar. Automatic doors, the waiting room, familiar. The forms, the wheelchairs. The last time 2 cousins laid stabbed. Wait, shot. No. 1 stabbed, 1 shot, all dead. What is it with the hospital silent enough to record a hymn? Or her eulogizing she'd rather die than birth this baby in quiet. Two more. Okay, Valentine's Day. Mississippi striptease. Mississippi striptease. You tuck our honey, munchkin sweetheart in. A bunch of ghost hearts, Valentine, bless him neat. Grow a dream from a root you thought croaked. The news said people should watch the moon. It's predicted to honey, bloodshot moon us all. We pump each other Mississippi stain on some Mississippi lawn. Another Mississippi moves, more damned than we understand. He's outwaited auctions for some honeymoon shack to feel begging beneath her scars, hatred brailled on her back. And I'm gonna end with a fun one because I think we need to laugh these days. There's a lot going on. So I'm gonna end with a fun one. All strippers reincarnate to Mississippi. Christ resurrected tailors in Chelsea's chew bubblegum beneath Bible red kissers. Blow Andrew and Brandon and Taylor, country kissers yoked in red, purple, clay colored, bruised, weathered cowgirl boots, line dance in a pickup's holy spotlight. Them all racy, country, soundtrack matter, girls with Vegas and Hollywood, deja vu, memories whenever she circles. Seduces, country boys, belt, buckle, proud. Country, speckled, Saturday, yeehaw, whiskey hour, bonfire, gives pulse to a county otherwise forgotten. Otherwise, engine and smoke and jean and leather. Otherwise, rubber and whiskey and seersucker and cigar. What to do when Madison starlights the line? Ghetto ass drop, Jackson's simmered lap. Oh, she will. And all of Mississippi will moon landing, hand clap, high five, handshake, cat call, celebrate her for their own private deja vu reminder of soulful opulence. Of Louis and Beamer and Cartier and Dolce and she'll Christian red bottom her way out those boots into a bar of ghetto. Music and ghetto dancing. She'll wake daddy from a ghetto nightmare where his baby shuts down a Jackson bar, where she screams, "I'm a bad bitch," to a Confederate moon at the 11:59 desperate hour. She raises whiskey, rosé-like, and swallows the wealthy fingers that decorate her by the county. Thank y'all for listening.
Thank you very much. I just got busy writing down one of your last lines, and I have a feeling if we go look in the chat, or if you go look in the chat, you're going to find a bunch of things that people have said about, like, oh, this line, that line, this line. Thank you. That was wonderful, and I can't wait for the conversation. I've got some things to ask you. In the meantime, we're going to bring up bring up, like there's still a mic in front of us. There is not. Beth and Fennelly, who I think we figured out that we've known each other somehow for maybe 25 years or something like that. And the older we get, the longer we've known each other. It's an amazing thing, isn't it? Beth Ann is a 2020 Academy of American Poets Laureate Fellow. She was the Poet Laureate of Mississippi from 2016 to 21, and she teaches in the MFA program at the University of Mississippi. She's won grants and awards from the NEA, the United States Artists, Pushcart, a Fulbright. She's published 3 books of poetry, 4 of prose. One of the ones that people tonight are familiar with is Heating and Cooling, 52 micro memoirs. And her newest, The Irish Goodbye, also micro memoirs, was released by Norton in February 2024. She lives with her husband, Tom Franklin, and their 3 children in Oxford, Mississippi. Beth Ann, so nice to see you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Nina. It is so fun to be reading for this series after, as you said, we met maybe 25 years ago. And to hear so many of those great open mic people. I mean, John was just reminding me we met at University of Indiana when I had a newborn. She's 24 now, so that puts a date on that. My friend Sandra, who I love to hear those new poems so much. I can't wait for the memoir. And my co-star Derrick, I loved hearing those poems so much from a book I really love. And we miss you in Mississippi, but I'm really glad that Nina and Bill made it possible for us to spend a little time together tonight virtually. So yes, I have this beautiful new book. It actually comes out February 24th, and I'm so excited to read from it tonight. How cool is it that I get to share my new work with you? So these are micro memoirs, a hybrid form that steals a little of what I love from various genres. So what I love from poetry is that extreme compression and abbreviation and lyric thrust. And what I love from fiction writing is creating a narrative arc and having tension and maybe character development. And what I love from nonfiction is truth telling. So these are very small, true stories about my life. I'll read you the first one. It's 1 paragraph long. Married love, playing the long game. Even now, 3 years later, when she opens the drawer beside the stove for an oven mitt, she finds the oven mitts folded. This is because 3 years earlier, during an intense game of scattergories, when the category was things you fold, and the letter was O, her husband had written oven mitts. Nobody folds oven mitts, she scoffed, and refused him his point, forcing him, ever since, to prove it. So that gives you a little sense of, how these pieces go. They kind of vary tonally and vary lengthwise, and they're from different parts of my life. This one is a smidge longer, and it's the only one I'll read that's, longer than a paragraph, I think. Me versus Slugs, Pandemic Edition. When the terrible virus was unleashed and our lives screeched to a halt, I planted a vegetable garden. My first. I tended it zealously with the darting eyes of a suicide bomber. This was March, April, May, the world hijacked by hysteria. I could have watered my garden with my tears after returning from the store rumored to have toilet paper, after scrubbing my hands and changing my clothes and scrubbing my hands and disinfecting every sack of off-brand rice, every dented can of beans. So, the garden. I would grow our groceries. I would knit a chlorophyll blanket to keep my family snug and safe. At first, it worked. Everything grows in Mississippi, even for a gardener Googling how to plant a seed. In a Mississippi minute, sprouts were sprouting. #winning. Until the day my frothy cilantro fronds went missing. Only their naked flagpoles remained, resembling chives. The next day, no poles. And, for that matter, no chives. My fennel, yes, I'd grown it solely for the name, was depilated. My dill, deadheaded. What invisible blight was this? My garden was syruped in sunshine, watered daily, and mulched to keep my sproutlings moist. Slugs, said Google. Slugs shimmy from under the mulch at night. They munch until dawn, then slime back under the mulch, engage in some hermaphroditic kink, then squirt out 30 eggs. And you know what happens to the eggs? Everything grows in Mississippi. Beer, said Google. Beer is the answer. I poured a can into a frisbee, placed the shallow grave in my garden, set my alarm for 4:30 a.m. With my phone flashlight, I returned. 6 or 7 gray, bloated bodies lulled in their Bud Light jacuzzi. But angling my phone, I could see other slugs were still chomping. Not 30, but 30 times 30 times 30, the flagstones glistening with their calligraphy, the screen door snotty with secretions. I donned my gardening gloves like a knight would his gauntlets, plucked a fat slug from a leaf of buttercrunch, and chucked it into the grass. But it was probably already U-turning to resume its salad course. I plucked another, gritted my molars, and squished. Enough. I didn't have the stomach for it. 2/3 of my children accepted the bribe, a dime a slug, thrilled to be out past bedtime and armed with flashlights. The 9-year-old earned $2.60. The 14-year-old, $4.10. But the next night they quit after $1 apiece. There aren't any more, they claimed the third night, but oh, the slugs were there. I could feel them crawling in the tender hollow at the back of my neck. I forged deeper into Google, which now said beer was not the answer. Instead, wait for midnight, make a pail of suds, drop the slugs in. They'd die beneath the bubbles, and I wouldn't have to watch or assist. Google was right about the soapy water, but beer was still the answer. I drank it steadily, girding for battle. Then I rampaged through my garden until every last slug had been dunked. The next day, I made my husband empty the sluggish pail. Game over. Months later, when things were still bad, but better, when we understood how the virus spread and learned to wear masks and thought we might survive, my 14-year-old mentioned the night of my slugfest, mentioned hearing me in the garden. Oh, really? I asked uneasily. Yeah, he said. I woke up and I could hear you cursing. Cursing? Yeah. It remains to be seen how historians will contextualize this long, dark pall of pandemic, the fraying of global mental health, the toll on our children's futures. And that official reckoning will overlap with our private reckonings, the large suffering, as well as the smaller stories, the cringeworthy, told for a laugh. Perhaps at a dinner party, say, people offering up their personal pandemic low. I won't have to scramble for mine. That night, which should have rightfully slipped into oblivion, is now freshly imagined from the point of view of my son, lying in his bed in the dark, listening to his drunkish mother marauding in the Mississippi night. You kept calling them, he broke off. Can I say the word without getting in trouble? I nodded. Assholes. You'd shout at each slug before dropping it in the pail. You're a little asshole. I closed my eyes in a slow blink. And, he continued, yeah? Sometimes you'd laugh. Okay, so that's Me versus Slugs, Pandemic Edition. This book has a lot of one-sentence pieces. They were really fun for me to write. I started that in Heating and Cooling, and I have several in here, so I'll just read you two. This is the shortest one in the book. It's 5 words long. Birthday. Even my earlobes look old. Number 1 sign you shouldn't send that letter. Your tongue dragging across the envelope glue leaves a ghost of Malbec. Thanks. Like, this is my example of what not to do. Right. This is a 1-paragraph piece. My sister used to give me blank journals for my birthday. My sister used to give me blank journals for my birthday, Christmas, whatever. In those years, she was single, living in Wrigleyville, or she had one or another of her fun boyfriends. On summer weekends, she'd go to street fairs or art fests, which Chicago seemed to host in giddy profusion, basically an excuse for day drinking while shopping and listening to bands. She knew I preferred unlined pages, less common at the stationers. So she'd always make it her mission to buy me the prettiest blank journal, each a different height and heft, with covers of marbled paper or embossed leather or vintage fabric. She got a kick out of how much I loved them, her wordy, nerdy younger sister. Gradually, because it takes a long time to fill a journal, I accrued a surplus. Each time I finished one, which was maybe every 9 months, maybe longer, I'd carefully select another from my bookshelf. I must have amassed close to 2 dozen by the night my sister up and died without a word, as if she foresaw I'd never not need an empty room to howl in for all the good it would do me. So I'll read two more, and I wanted to read one. I knew that there'd be so many writers sharing this, this open mic-y thing with me, and I wanted to write about my very first writing conference and a memory I have there that's so funny to me because the person I wrote about, I know doesn't remember it at all, but it's still like one of my favoriteest memories. Most days are days like this. If you have gin, there's no tonic. If you have tonic, there's no gin. And if you by chance have both, for sure, you lack a lime. No lime, not even rattling at the back of the crisper, juiceless as a stone, dark and bitter as a testicle of Jehovah. Most days. Except the day of your first big writers' conference. At the base of the mountain, you passed the sign, last liquor for 30 miles. So you pulled off. Hours later, after the reception, someone organized an after party. But by the time you got there, writers milling about, admiring the stars, congenially flirting. The booze was gone. You, meanwhile, were starstruck, working hard at looking chill, when up walks Tim O'Brien. That's right, Tim fucking O'Brien, a man who'd written a book so beautiful it gave you paper cuts, a book from which you knew whole passages by heart, though you said none of this to him. In fact, you were bereft of words entirely. That's when he murmured to no one in particular, I could really go for a gin and tonic. You popped your trunk. You handed him the gin, then the tonic. He gawked like you were the merciful angel of juniper, which you were, your wings surely glowing in the limelight emitting from your trunk when, for your final trick, you held aloft the lime. Even the lime, he crowed, boyish in his baseball cap. You understood in that moment all your sins had been redeemed. Most days are days in which you dryly tote up all your petty failures. But let's not dismiss the time you produced a lime for Tim O'Brien. So, this book, because it's nonfiction, I showed all the pieces to anybody who was mentioned in the book. I wanted, everyone to kind of sign off on all the facts. And everyone did, except I didn't know, I don't know Tim O'Brien. I didn't know how to get this piece to him. So I thought about changing the name, but I felt like it would seem coy or something just to say like a famous author. It just wouldn't be as good. So a friend of a friend gave me Tim O'Brien's email address, and I sent this piece to him off with like great trepidation. And a couple months later, I was walking in an antique store past this row of antique chairs that were like cordoned off, like, don't sit here. And I opened my email and the subject heading was from Tim O'Brien. I just fell into one of those chairs you're not supposed to sit on. And he ended up asking if he could use an epigraph from that piece for his next novel. Is that so crazy? And then he wrote me this nice email about it. And I'm like, wow. Could I use that part of your email as a blurb? So on my book, y'all have a blurb from Tim O'Brien, which is so funny to me. So, okay, last piece. And then I'm going to say thank you so much for listening and how much fun I've had. Oh yeah, I also picked this one because I knew that there were going to be so many writers and readers here. And what I was thinking was people whose job is writing and reading, it never looks like their job is hard. And so my husband is from Alabama, and his dad is a mechanic, and his brother's a mechanic, and his nephews are all mechanics. And I would go down there for Thanksgiving or something and like read something all day or grade papers all day or work hard on something. And we'd be sitting around the table and they'd be like, oh, they're sitting there with like bruised fingernails and like cuts on their bodies. And they'd be like, oh, that carburetor, and I'd want to be like, oh, that chapter on Dickinson, but you can't say that. You just sound like such a jerk. So I started thinking about how easy our jobs look and fantasizing that there'd be a way to show how hard we're working when we're writing and reading. So that's what this piece is about. It's my last piece. It is hard when your job is hard, but doesn't appear to be so. For instance, when the lawn crew arrives and you are reading, you are aware of how this looks. You are aware that if they glance through the window, they will see a woman in her pajamas reclining in an easy chair, reading. They cradle heavy leaf blowers, wear goggles and earplugs. Your slippered feet are propped on an ottoman. They are well within their rights to think, look at this idle woman. But in fact, you're reading student papers, student poems, dense literary criticism is far from easy, though you read in an easy chair. Sometimes, in order to keep from quitting, you must bully or cajole yourself. You are fatigued from this reading, though it doesn't show, so you get no credit for your stamina. If only when reading difficult material, your face grew red and sweaty. If only your breathing grew ragged and labored, like during great exertion at the gym. Deadlift and chest press, hammer curl and lat raise. And now the most difficult exercise of all, lick finger to turn page. You can do it, BA. 2 more sets of 8 reps. That's it.
Beth Ann and Derrick. What a great pairing. What great words and what great order. Thank you both.
You bet. Thank you.
So Bill is going to pin us all together, the 3 of us. And so we'll be able to talk. I've got you, and all right, I've got you all. Thank you again. Oh, writing is a hard job. We think people should be paid for it. And I think about how many poems an hour, or how many hours does it take to write a poem? And if you break that down into wages, that may come to like a fraction of a penny per word. All of which is to say, buy their books, and you can contribute to paying them tonight also by going to the After Hours website, which Bill's going to put the link for, and make a donation that After Hours will then process and give these guys. So yeah.
The link is in the chat.
What's that?
The link is in the chat.
A link is in the chat.
And that's
Okay.
not code for something.
All right, that's not code. That's just is what it is. That's the truth telling in the poem or the memoir. It's the truth. So you guys were in different ways making me think about the construction and conceptualization of your collections. And we know that people don't just stick random poems together. But couple of observations for each of you. For you, Derrick, I was thinking about how Mississippi and space and strippers came together. You kind of know what I'm asking you for, right? How did
Absolutely.
those come together? What was important about the uh, vortex or the Venn diagram?
Yeah, great question. And it's a question. This is what's cool when you read something that's, I think Stripper Wonderland was 2017 that it came out, the book. So that's almost been a decade. And so going back to it, and these are things I haven't thought about for a while, but in thinking back to the construction of that book, uh, there, there were two things that I was thinking about. One is play. I wanted to have fun with that collection. It was the first collection that was started after grad school. And so the previous two felt a lot of pressure, felt like they got to be perfect. And this one was like, hey, have some fun. I was living in Oxford, Mississippi, working at the University of Mississippi. Um, and it was a fun time in my life. It was a lot of new things. I had a new kid, living in a new city or town, and so I wanted to have fun. And so uh, the collection before Stripper in Wonderland was a collection of boxing poems titled Ropes. And that collection required a bunch of research and watching fights and listening to interviews. And it was an epistolary collection that was written entirely in persona for the most part. Well, I put entirely in for the most part. For the most part, in persona, where these boxers are writing letters across different time periods. There were these heavyweight boxers, Jack Johnson, Joe Louis, Joe Frazier, Mike Tyson. They're writing each other letters. And so I mentioned that being the previous book because so much of my life that happened while I was working on that book, I never wrote about because I was invested in this project that wasn't a project that had to do with these boxers in their lives. And so when I got to Stripper in Wonderland or started writing poems about Stripper in Wonderland, there were several things that was happening in my life. One was I'm living in this new place, Oxford, Mississippi. Two was that I spent a good amount of time before that book hanging out with a good friend of mine who was an NBA player, basketball player. And we traveled a lot on his dime, and we hung out in strip clubs and had chicken wings in strip clubs. And so I wanted to write about actual strip clubs, but I also wanted to, in sort of a cathartic way, writing these poems and the speaker being really, really close to me in my own life experiences. I wanted to produce something that felt like a stripping away, that felt vulnerable. And so there's a lot of poems about my kid in there. And so the stripper and the person that's allowing themselves to be exposed is the speaker. And that's the stripper in Wonderland. And Wonderland is a lot of places, strip clubs, but also Mississippi. And so there's this kind of, Beth Ann had mentioned narrative. There's this kind of narrative that's happening throughout the collection and a stripping away that's happening throughout the collection.
I wasn't thinking about that as stripper or striptease, but I love that. I love that because we do strip. And we also tease because we don't always speak clearly. We may speak through veils. Well, that kind of answers that. So I want to ask you, Beth Ann, with that kind of memoir, which I don't think I saw any of before Heating and Cooling, how did you, well, was there something or is there something that you, like a period of time or some themes that you used to constitute this memoir?
No, there wasn't a period of time. I mean, there's childhood ones, coming of age, young adult, up to the present moment. And the book also varies very widely in tone. So some of them are lighter and some of them are, sad. And there's different lengths, from 5 words to, I don't know, 20 pages. So, there wasn't really a lot of unifying thing, except it's all me. It's just me, me, me. But in my first version of Heating and Cooling, I had 100 pieces, and my editor said, it's too much. And I said, oh, like too much what? Like, and she's like, it's too much you. And I'm like, okay, so what do I cut? Like, what are the weaker pieces? And she was saying, well, it's not that some are weaker. It's just too much. So I ended up looking at the book, and if I mentioned anything that never came back in, I cut it. Like any of my roles, because I'm in there as like a mother and a professor and a wife and a human being walking around on planet Earth. If I mention something like, for example, I cut out all the ones where I was traveling. I get inspired a lot when I travel, but it was, I think, really disjointing for the reader to all of a sudden be in Prague, or then a couple of pages later to be in Mexico or something. I just kept it really, cut out all those pieces and solidified my roles. And if someone came up more than once, they got to stay in the book, but if someone came up once, they were cut. And that's how I did it.
So how would you describe the arc, particularly with both books, when you've gone back and read them? Maybe you had I would imagine you had the sense of what that umbrella was before, and maybe not. Maybe you didn't discover it till after.
Yeah, I wouldn't actually say that there is so much a narrative arc where we see the quest or move from like innocence to experience or something. Like I love a book that takes the reader on a journey where you landed someplace different. That actually wasn't exactly the project of this book. I was trying to have each piece be its own thing. I'm not interested in really in the fragment. I was interested in making these very small stories. I do think there's kind of like a novelistic thing that happens when you read like both collections, because you see the same characters come up and certain memories come up and certain, problems come up. In the new book, the one that's coming out, in 2 weeks, The Irish Goodbye, there's kind of 2 threads that come up a lot. And one is, the unexpected death of my sister in 2008. I read one piece about that tonight. And the other thread that I didn't read tonight is about my mother's death from Alzheimer's, her very, very long journey. So this incredibly sudden overnight death, and then this death that went on for years and years and years. Those are kind of these like 2 sad threads that weave back and forth, but in between there's just a lot of frivolity, observations, lists, and zaniness in general. But in that way, to me, it maybe reflects life, because I think that we're all, moving through life and making observations and, eating and talking and all these things while we are also walking through life with these sadnesses that we carry with us.
Yeah. I want each of you to feel free to respond or ask a question of the other regarding what they've just said about their own work.
Well, I want to ask Derrick if he would tell everybody a little bit about his 2 Chains project, because I think that's really fascinating and it's a departure. And I think a lot of poets wouldn't understand that it's even a possibility that someone can do something like that. So could you describe it a little bit? I know about it, but tell everyone who doesn't know about it what it is.
Yeah, thanks for bringing it up. In March 3rd, a book that I worked the last 2-3 years on with the celebrated rapper 2 Chainz will come out. It's called The Voice in My Head is God, and we co-authored it, but it's his story. It's 2 Chainz' story. It's a memoir, and it's grounded in spirituality. It's grounded in, his belief that our intuition can be a higher power communicating with us, right? And so he fundamentally believes, trust your intuition, and allow it to steer you in the right direction. But that's going to be with Simon and Schuster. Again, that comes out March 3rd. And to Beth Ann's comment of that a poet could do something like that, I didn't know if I could do it, right? We made a great connection at the outset, and we had great conversations, kind of brainstorming conversations, and it was a scary, scary proposition, you know. You know, Toy Derrick says, write the hard poems. Well, this was like, write the hard book, you know, and it was the hardest thing I've ever had to do professionally and artistically. But I'm just very proud of the book that we were able to write and the story that we were able to tell. And so looking forward to that coming out.
Me too. And I think it's so great that, you're still writing poems despite having this, big project that's, with this big publisher and is going to be making money and a commercial success. I love that you've still been like getting done the poetry work too.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I believe it's important for me to stay connected to poetry. And in fact, in a couple of days, I'll be doing Lyrical Sanctuary, which is a open mic series here on campus in Milwaukee. And that's where I started at those open mics. So it's always good to return to like those spaces or return to the poem. Still not sure what's going to happen next for me professionally, or I should say artistically. Not sure where I want to go next. And so maybe that's a way for me to ask you. There's still so much poetry and emphasis on wordplay and on the line when it comes to the micro memoirs. How have you transitioned into that space, and do you miss just the poetry in its purest form?
Um, So I should say yes, being that my training is in poetry and, poetry is so like unloved in the greater society that I think like, poets are like the best people on earth, like zombie apocalypse. Like I want to be like, I want this open mic to come for me and like take care of me. Like poets are like the best, like most loyal people in the world. That being said, my whole life I was just focused on the line break. And then I just started playing with the sentence and it felt so liberating. And I just felt like this form had a lot to teach me and I'm kind of greedy. And so as long as I'm learning, I'm interested. So my learning curve in this form isn't over yet. So I'm gonna keep doing it until I feel like I'm not learning something anymore.
It's really good. You're really excellent at it. And the pacing that you read with and the pacing that you write these collections with, is fantastic.
Oh, Derrick, I miss you.
I know we just need to keep each other around more. Like, you want to know how cool I am? Talk to Beth Ann. Like,
Well, you know
and vice
what?
versa.
We're about to ask that question, but I want to ask you, Derrick, what made it scary working on that collection?
That let me count the ways. The first thing was length, right? I'd never written anything more than 80 pages. And so the length was scary. Writing in narrative was scary, in prose, that was terrifying. And then writing someone who, I have a lot of reverence and love for now, but at the outset, I had a ton of respect for. Two Chainz as an artist, but also just as a man. And so I wanted to make sure I got it right, and so that was challenging to tell someone else's story when it's been my story in the past. If I make a mistake about a date, or if I make a mistake about, was it this cousin with me or that cousin? Was I wearing a blue shirt or a red shirt? Through your edits, you can get closer, or your revisions, you can get closer to the truth. But uh, I knew what kind of, in my own writing, what kind of sort of spiritual or moral truths or soulful truths that I wanted to tell. And all of the details didn't always matter in my own work, right? But as long as the spirit of what I wanted to convey was there, that was much easier than saying, hey, I got to make sure I get this detail right about this story that we're talking about, because it matters to the person, it mattered to him. And so that was a scary undertaking too.
So what was you talk about your truths, but then there's also his truths. How did those come together or clash?
Not a ton of Well, I'll say a ton of time, spending a ton of time together. I would take trips to Atlanta. I'd be there for maybe 1, 2, 3 days sometimes, and we'd spend hours and hours and hours talking. I mean, in order for it to be authentic and for it to be good art and tell the story that was important to Two Chains, we had to get to know each other well and fairly quickly, you know. And so we spent a lot of time together, made a great connection. And, you know, I'm gonna say I want to say this humbly. I think I was the perfect person for the job because with him being a rapper, I used to be in a rap group called Black Elephant in the early 2000s, and so there was some nuances that I could draw from through my own life experience.
Hmm. I'm just thinking about how um, I don't know much about the process of translation, but my assumption is that the poet might prefer a certain type of person or a person with a certain background to be translating them.
Yeah, the cool thing was it was like meeting an old friend, and so this is a person that I could imagine myself hanging out with despite this project, right? And so we're kind of similar in age, kind of grew up in kind of similar spaces, and so it was very, I want to say, comfortable for me to translate, you know, the things that were important to him to the page because I could identify with a lot of the things that he cared about, and that was a part of his life experience. Now, not everything, okay? All right, so there's some things like that was completely foreign for me. All right, so not everything. I don't want there to be any misconceptions that I sold dope back in the day. So, but I knew how to talk about those things, right? Or how to translate those things for him. And it's something that he's open about, like his past and how he arrived to where he eventually has arrived in his life.
Um, I want to ask you, Beth Ann, you used the phrases lyric trust and and truth telling. And just wanted to hear you say something about um, how those come together for you.
Yeah, so I was just talking about how the micro memoir, I think, is essentially a hybrid form, meaning that it has more than one parent. So I think it has three parents. It's got a poetry parent that gives it that, that lyrical thrust, like I was saying, and then the fiction parent that like is thinking about like how you tell a story in a really small space, and then the nonfiction parent that it's saying you're working in the realm of fact, like almost like when I was writing poems, writing a sonnet, you're working in under certain constrictions, like 14 lines, or is it iambic pentameter, or what the rhyme scheme is. Like now I'm just working with a different kind of constriction, and the constriction is it has to be factually true. And a lot of my poems were autobiographical, but they didn't have to be. And even if they were, if we were talking about them, we'd be like, well, the speaker in this poem, blah, blah, blah. So, it's just a little more vulnerable, frankly, to just cop it as memoir from the get-go and just say, this is me. These are my decisions. These are my experiences. These are my opinions. You do feel a little more vulnerable, I guess, with the book coming out February 24th. I'm kind of thinking about that a lot right now.
So it's when I said February 24, I thought you were saying 2024. But
Oh, no, it comes out
it's
February
February.
24th, like in like weeks.
Wow. I mean,
So yeah, so
that
that's why it was so fun
is
for me to read tonight, not only just to read with my old pal Derrick and so many of my friends on the open mic and some Facebook folks that I'm friends with but haven't seen their beautiful faces before, but because I've read from the galleys, but I haven't really read from this hard copy book that has come out, so it's fun.
okay. So I want each of you to tell us something about the other person that would be meaningful, to us or to the other that might be or an insight or well, I'll stop there.
So like you want the tea, or like are you asking for the, no, I'm kidding. I'm just kidding.
Does anyone have a mute button?
Um,
Can we mute
There
this
is a
guy?
mute button, but just to share some insight, something that you think that readers would benefit from knowing.
I'm not sure if how much this would benefit readers, but I would like to share that um, Beth and Fennelly has been extremely instrumental for me professionally, and I learned a lot in my time at University of Mississippi working with her, but more so being friends and getting close, specifically about there's a way that Bethan cares about the student and puts the student first, and provides a cradle for the student. And for me, coming there right out of grad school, I had taught my own classes beforehand, but not to the degree that my new job at, the University of Mississippi was asking me to do. And I wasn't part of an MFA program and all of that, or a faculty member. And that was one of the things that really impressed me from day one. And when I got there, she was the director of the MFA program at the University of Mississippi, and I ended up following her as the MFA director. And the only way I was able to do that successfully is to watch her care for our students in a very loving way. And so that's something that I think is we all need to do a good job at, protecting and supporting and loving our students. But that's something I had a front row seat of watching for a long time at the University of Mississippi.
Oh, that's so sweet. This is going to be a love fest. My God. Yeah. So for readers of Derrick's work, I would say, I think people should read his poems aloud when they read to understand how nuanced his sonic wordplay is. Like maybe you heard it in the last one, but there's a lot of like mouthfeel and like rich sounds. So I think that's one thing that I would say, read it out loud. I mean, I actually recommend reading all poems out loud, but I think Derrick's, attention to sound is really gorgeous. And then I'll also just say he's someone with immense personal dignity and a true family man in that kind of old-fashioned way that he understands how to balance and prioritize. And he's a really good dad, in addition to all the other nice things about him being a great teacher and a colleague. I think that he modeled for our students too how to do all the things, get your work done, be a good friend and have some fun, but also, be there for your child and take care of them when they need you.
Well, yeah, I kind of knew that this was going to be a bit of a love festy question. And thank you. And I'm enjoying it. I know the audience is as well. I do want to say that one of my guiding principles came from Robert Pinsky, who talked about the importance of reading poems out loud. And, he's a jazz musician as well. And, there is that kind of blend of, or the interaction of notes, of melody and chord that that does make it a whole experience. And by that I mean, I was thinking about kind of being able to guess what your words, Derrick, look like on the page.
Mhm.
And if you wanted to hold up your book and show us, that would be great too. But there is an invitation there to, for the reader to construct the music for themselves in their reading of the juxtaposition of the words on the page.
If it's coming through.
Okay. And I imagine something quite different. I was imagining things.
Well, with the ones I read this evening, Nina, those are completely different. They're like blown up on the page. Like they're everywhere. They're like these little pockets where I'm using a lot of caesura. This I just grabbed my latest book. But the ones I read, so what you're imagining for as it relates to the poems I read this evening, yes, they're all over the place, playing a lot with white space. There's a lot going on. I wish I had the physical book to show you, but what you're imagining is probably close to what it looks like on the page.
Which would be really fun for the reader to look at, because now they can go back and listen to the recording of tonight, listen to you read it, and kind of hold it next to what it looks like on the page. And I think there's some room for creation by, like I said, the reader who is now reading it aloud and on the page. That could take us into a whole other conversation, which I wish we had time for. But Beth Ann, you read like a poet, so it hasn't shaken you loose.
Well, thanks, Nina. Thank you so much. And I'm glad that you opened things off by reading a poem. So thank you for that.
Great. Let's see. Is there anything else? It's just about time for us to wrap up. Anything either of you want to say before we wrap?
Just thank you so much. I really enjoyed the evening.
Yeah, quickly, what's next for you, Beth Ann? Are you going on a book tour or anything?
Yeah, I am. And if anyone was interested where I was reading, you could go to my website, which is just bethanfennelly.com. And I'm, going to Charleston, New Orleans, Baltimore, New York, Indiana, and Illinois, and Little Rock. So I'm doing like East Coast and South and Midwest. I'm not going out at West at all. But I'd love to see anybody who wants to come out.
All right. So, and next month we're going to have Don Teft and Michael Kleber Diggs, who it's just interesting how we encounter people as this month with you guys, and we'll just see what happens as we go along. I think Michael had a poem that was about some of the murders, about the murders in Minneapolis, and I know with Dawn it's going to be a political evening, so be warned. I really want to thank both of you, Derrick and Beth Ann, and all of the wonderful open micers for being with us tonight. We'll see you next month.